any parameterized constructor can be invoked in three methods. One is implicit call, one more is explicit call, and one more is initialization at the time of declaration with assignment operator. If you observe, in implicit call, the declaration of object is followed immediately by argument list, where the list is enclosed in the parenthesis. Now, here I created one object, here also I am creating one object, but here it is implicit call because after object, immediately we have argument list. Welcome back to one and all. Myself, Vasanta, lecturer in Computer Science, Vidhyaashram, Pre-University College, Temple of Excellence, Mysore. Today, we are going to start with third session of Constructor and Destructor chapter. Whereas already in the previous session, you have studied regarding the types of constructor. Then what do you mean by constructor? Whereas constructor is a special member function used to initialize the object of a class automatically. When we come on types of constructor, there are three types: default constructor, parameterized constructor, as well as copy constructor. Regarding that, already you came to know in the previous session. Whereas on today's session, you will come to know regarding invoking of parameterized constructor. That is how exactly the parameterized constructor can be executed here, can be called here. That can be done in explicit call, implicit call, initialization at the time of declaration with assignment operator. In three methods, we can be able to call or invoke the parameterized constructor. Whereas parameterized constructor is nothing but the constructor which having arguments can be called as parameterized constructor. Is it no? I am going to give an example. For example, class. The class name we are given as add. In this, especially in public section, we are taking the functions add only inside the bracket. For example, int a. If you have argument, then it can be called as parameterized constructor. Then we are closing the class. Here, if you observe here this is a especially parameterized constructor. Here it contains the arguments. Whereas any parameterized constructor can be invoked in three methods. One is implicit call, one more is explicit call, and one more is initialization at the time of declaration with assignment operator. Now, when an object is created, the constructor will invoke it automatically, already we are told. That means in the main program, when we are going to create the object, for example, in the main program, void main, there, when we are going to create the object, for example, the class name is add. Here, when we are going to create the object, for example, object, without argument, then default constructor, it will go to execute. If you have arguments here, then parameterized constructor, here it will go to execute. That means when we are going to create the object, automatically this constructor will execute. There are three ways to invoke the parameterized constructor. One is explicit call, implicit call, initialization at the time of declaration with assignment or assigning the operator. In three methods, we can able to call the parameterized constructor. Now, one by one we will discuss. Now, first one, implicit call. What do you mean by this implicit call? Whereas in implicit call, the declaration of object is followed by argument list enclosed in a parenthesis. I am going to give an example. For example, in the main program, void main, here we are creating the object. For example, class name we are given as add. Then object here we will write. Whereas in implicit call, at the time of declaration or creation of object, here add is the class name and object here we are written. Immediately after writing the object, here itself, if you write the arguments, for example, 10, 20, anything, then it can be called as implicit call. Declaration of object, this is a declaration of object, is followed by argument list. Here we are declaring the object is followed by argument list enclosed in a parenthesis. Here this list is enclosed in a parenthesis. Parenthesis is nothing but brackets. That is nothing but implicit call. Whereas in implicit call, we have, for example, add object 10, 20. Whereas in this case, if you observe, we have two arguments. That means after creating an object, Immediately we have argument list that is enclosed in a parenthesis. If you observe the syntax, class name, here class name we are given as add, then object, whatever object name you want you can give object, then inside the bracket itself you have to mention the argument list, then semicolon. Then it can be called as implicit call. But when they come on explicit call, here the declaration of object, that means creation of object, is followed by assignment operator. That means here don't write the arguments directly. For example, add is the class name, then object. The declaration of object is done here, is followed by assignment operator. Assignment operator is nothing but equal symbol, followed by assignment operator, then constructor name. Here constructor name is nothing but class name here. What is the class name we are given? Add. That same thing here we'll write add, and argument list enclosed in a parenthesis. Inside the bracket, here whichever value you want, you can write here. If you observe in implicit call, the declaration of object is followed immediately by argument list, where the list is enclosed in a parenthesis. But in explicit call, the declaration of object is followed by assignment operator. It means that after creating object, next you have to write equal symbol, then class name, or we can say it as constructor name, then argument list are enclosed in a parenthesis. Then it can be called it as parameterized constructor. If you see the example, add is the class name, object 1 is the name of the object, equals once again constructor name, that is nothing but object name, especially here the constructor name is same as your class name, then argument list. This is nothing but explicit call. Whereas if you observe the syntax, class name, object equals once again class name. Here if you want you can write class name or constructor name also, because both are same. Then inside the bracket you have to write the arguments list. Then finally semicolon. This is the syntax as well as example for explicit call. Whereas in implicit call, after object immediately we have argument list. Whereas in explicit call, after object it is followed by assignment operator, then once again class name, then argument list. And the last one is initialization at the time of declaration with assignment operator. Whereas if you observe here, if I want I can take one or more than one argument. Here 10, 20 I can take. Here also only 10 I can take, or 20, 30 I can take. That means more than one argument here we can take here, both in implicit as well as in explicit. But whereas in the third case, that is initialization at the time of declaration with assignment operator, there it is creation of object or declaration of object is followed by assignment operator, then we have to write the argument. Here we does not have any parenthesis, only we have to write after equals only the value here you have to write. The same example I am to take add, then object, then equals, then value. Here if you observe, whereas in implicit call as well as in explicit calls, more than one argument I can take. Whereas here, maximum itself, only one argument we can able to take. That is, declaration of object is followed by assignment operator. Assignment operator is nothing but equal symbol can be called as assignment operator, and value to be initialized. Which value, by which value you want to initialize, write down that value. If you see the example, add object equals 10. That means 10 is the value here. Whichever value you want, you can give 10, 20, 30. Whichever value you want, you can give, then semicolon. While writing the syntax, class name, object equals argument. Now is it clear? It means that parameterized constructor can be invoked in three methods: implicit call, explicit call, and one more is initialization at the time of declaration with assignment operator. Whereas in implicit call, declaration of object immediately followed by argument list. Whereas in explicit call, creation of object, that is declaration of object, is followed by assignment operator, then class name, then once again argument list. Whereas the main difference here, in implicit as well as explicit, more than one argument we can take. Whereas in the last case, compulsory maximum itself only one argument it can take. But here also declaration of object is followed by assignment operator, then the value, whichever value you want you can give. Now is it clear? Now we will explain this with an example program, because in the exam you may want to get the question, explain implicit call. Explain implicit call with an syntax and example program, or explain explicit call with an example program, or explain initialization at the time of declaration with assignment operator with an example program. That's why in the same program we have combined all the three, that is implicit call, explicit call, as well as initialization at the time of declaration with assignment operator. All the three concepts in the same program we have combined. In the exam, if they ask implicit call, then definition, syntax, then example, with that example program you can write. In the same way, for explicit call also, their explanation, example, syntax, with that you can write the same program. In the same way, for the last one also, explanation, example, syntax, with that example program. It means that for all the three, you can write the same program, that is for implicit call, explicit call, as well as assigning value, that is at the time of declaration with assignment operator. For all the three, we can write only one program. For example, consider I want to display the value using implicit call, explicit call, as well as assignment operator. I just want to display the value. Here I am not doing any calculation, I just want to display the values. For example, any value x, y, z or a, b, c, d, any values, just I want to display by using all the three concepts. Then first, as usual, we will start with the header file #include iostream.h. Whereas this is supporting header file for cin as well as cout function. In the program, if you use it cin as well as cout, then we require this header file, that is iostream.h. Then next, the class name we are given as values. Here the class name is values. Then in private section, we are declaring the variable int ABC. We want to display the value of ABC only. We are not doing any calculation. That's why we have declared the variable in private section int ABC. Then afterwards in public section, I am taking one constructor. It's a constructor function. This, how can I say it's a constructor function? Because class name as well as function name are same here. Here also values, here also values. Then inside the bracket, here we have three values, three arguments, that is int x, int y, int z. It means that it contains three values. Then we can say that it is a parameterized constructor. How we can say parameterized? Because inside the bracket, if you have arguments, then we can say that it is a parameterized constructor. If it does not contain any arguments, then it can be called as default constructor. Then in this, we are initializing x value is a. We are just moving whatever x value we are getting from the main program, that we will move to a, and y value to b. In the same way, z value to c. It means that we are just initializing a value is x, b value is y, and c value is z. Then we will close this function. It means that in this, the first function is values, that is especially parameterized constructor function. And next, one more function we are taking, values only. This we are declared in public section. The class name as well as function name are same here. Here we have int z. That means only one argument here I am having. Here we have three arguments. Here we have only one argument. Whereas in this also a constructor, this also a constructor, this also parameterized constructor, this one also parameterized constructor. But here we have three arguments, but here we have only one argument. The same z value we are initializing for a as well as for b as well as for c. For all the three we will initializing the same value, then we will close this function. That means first function is parameterized function, second function is also parameterized function. Next, one more function we are taking, that is word display function. It is just a member function. Here we are displaying the value cout, value of a equals, display the a value. Then value of b equals, display the b value. In the same way, value of c equals, display the c value. Then we will close this function. It means that if you observe here, totally how many functions we have? Totally three functions. One is first one values, this is second one values, and this one is display function. Whereas this is a constructor function, especially parameterized function. 3 arguments. This one also parameterized constructor, but only one value. And the next one is void display function. Whereas display function, there we are just displaying the values of all the ABC. Then finally, we are going to close a class. How to close the class? After flower bracket, you have to put semicolon. Then it means that now we are closing the class. In this, if you observe, 3 functions, constructor, constructor and regular member function. Now, in the main program, void main, empty bracket here we'll write. That is main functions now we are starting. Then here values, we are creating the object. While creating object, class name as well as here while creating object, same name we have to write. Then values object 1. First object we are creating, then 10, 20, 30. Inside the brackets itself, after creating object, immediately we are writing the argument. Then which type of constructor, especially here, which type of parameterized constructor? Here it is implicit call constructor function, because after creating object, immediately we have argument list. That's why here we'll write implicit call. It means that for A it will take 10, for B 20, for C 30 it will take. Values we are passing 10, 20, 30. For XYZ, that value is initialized here for ABC. Then with the help of this object 1, we are displaying the value. Then what exactly it will display for ABC? It will display 10, 20, 30. Value of A equals 10, value of B equals 20, value of C equals 30. Like that it will display by using object 1 dot display function. The next one, values object 2 we are taking. Here I created one object. Here also I am creating one object, but here it is implicit call because after object immediately we have argument list. But here object then equals once again the class name, then argument we are writing. If you observe here, then here this can be called as explicit call. In explicit call, class name, object equals class name, then argument list. It means that values is the class name, object equals values, then inside the bracket we are written 45. That is an explicit call. In the same program, we are using all the 3 concepts. That's why by using single line command, you have to mention which type of parameterized call here exactly. Then here value equals 45 here we are given. That means only one value, then exactly the second constructor, especially parameterized constructor, here it will going to execute. Then for A also, what is the value? For A also 45, for B also 45, for C also 45 we are initializing here. Then by using object2.display we are calling. It means that it will display the value by using display function. For A also it will display 45, for B also 45, for C also 45. Then this is explicit call. Next, by using initialization at the time of declaration with assignment operator. That means here declaration of object is followed by assignment operator, then the value here you have to write. This can be used only when we have only one argument. See here, values object equals 40 here we are given. It means that here also I am having only one value, but here it is explicit call, whereas here it is at the time of declaration by using assignment operator we can able to initialize. Then here we are given 40. Then with the help of object 3, if I want to call the function, especially display function, then for all the values A, B, C, it will display 40, 40, 40. Then later on, we are closing the main program. Now is it clear? It means that from this, you come to know how to use parameterized constructor, how to call the parameterized constructor. This can be called in 3 methods. One is implicit, explicit, and one more is initialization at the time of declaration with assignment operator. Now is it clear? Then in the next class, you will come to know regarding how to perform constructor overloading. What do you mean by constructor overloading? Then with that, how to write destructor. Whereas on this chapter, you are studied regarding till now the constructor, which are the, what do you mean by constructor, how to declare the constructor, how to initialize the constructor, then which are the types of constructor, that is default, parameterized as well as copy constructor, how to write the program regarding that. But till now, you are not studied regarding destructor. Whereas in the next class, you will come to know regarding constructor overloading as well as what do you mean by destructor, which is the operator we are using for destructor, how to call the destructor function, what do you mean by destructor function. Regarding that, you will come to know in the next session. Thank you for all of you.